is where I have agreement, because the reason that I was vegetarian for so long, despite knowing that it wasn't better for me nutritionally, is the animal argument. And this is wrong. This is wrong for the animal. It's wrong for us as humans. It's wrong for the planet. This is also wrong. And this is wrong. That's the dairy animals being kept in cages to milk. And this is wrong. If we now move from that into the planet argument, they were saying that 25% of the rivers no longer reach the ocean. Tim Lang was saying if you take a hamburger, there's been water given into the grains, which is fed to the animal, and he then says you've got 2,400 litres of water behind that one hamburger. Well, yes, that's insane. And if one good thing can come from this movie, I would love it to be that we go back to farming in the right way and eating the right foods in the right way, because that is wrong. But then this is also wrong. Because is it better for the animal? Well, we wouldn't have those animals in a vegan world. Farmers don't keep pets. So there's no cows, there's no pigs, there's no sheep, there's no chickens, there's no goats. You have no animals, then no ruminants that are sustaining topsoil. So you have to grow food upside down in greenhouses like that, and that is wrong. And this is then what your landscape looks like, and that is also wrong. But this is right. Who's that handsome fella at Polyface Farm? Joel Salatin. And this is also right. This was a photo taken by my husband Andy on a recent dog walk. If you pan to the left, you can see the sea. If you pan right, you can see cows. And that's our house, because we just go up into the hill. So my local food is beef and lamb and fish, and we have people who have chickens and grow vegetables in the village. It's not bean burritos from Mexico, not my local food. Going back to the animal argument, the question to ask of the vegans is, what do you eat for which nothing has died? Because if you seriously think that even if we don't feed those grains to the cattle, but you guys are going to eat those grains, do you really think that the way we industrially farm nowadays, you are not going to hoover up rabbits and voles and mice and birds and worms and flies, all of the things that the vegans want protected? And what do you eat that sustains soil? Because the only thing that sustains soil is ruminants, which is meat and dairy from cows and sheep and goats. And so what do you eat as a vegan that is going to sustain the soil that's going to feed the planet? Because your vegan world is taking us to that Armageddon of every field is now a greenhouse. And Cargill and Monsanto control the food supply. And those kind of organizations are the guys behind the Eat Lancet diet. So I truly believe that that is actually an end game. Leah Keith said the North American prairie is now only 2% of its original size, and the topsoil, which was once 12 feet deep, can now only be measured in interest. So just to summarize those three arguments, first of all, I say to a vegan, so what supplements do you take? The minute they say they take supplements, and it should be B12 as a minimum, you can tell them, well, your diet is not healthy because you need to supplement. De facto, it's not healthy. If they say they don't take any supplements, then you guys are medical practitioners, so give them your card. The animal argument, what do you eat for which nothing has died? What do you even think you eat for which nothing has died? And what do you eat that projects and rejuvenates topsoil? Because that's what my diet does. The most honest line I found in the movie was, I don't know if you saw it right at the beginning, the statements expressed in this film are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. No shit.
Alpha MSH. Melanocyte stimulating hormone. Alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. If you don't want to remember any of the other acronyms and terms I've talked about this episode so far, do try and remember MSH. Okay? Mouse, Sam, hamster. MSH. Another reason why getting ample light, ideally sunlight, but it could be other sources of UV light to the eyes, stimulates MSH. This has been shown over and over again. And keeps the desire to eat or appetite in check in healthy ranges. This is also why in the spring and summer months, animals and people eat less. Now, for hibernating animals, it's different because the bear hibernating, actually bears don't truly hibernate. Technically, by scientific criteria, they don't hibernate, but they go into a kind of torpor. The hibernating animals, they don't eat much because they're in burrows or dens, or they're just wrapped up in a little ball or whatever it is that hibernating animals do. So they're, of course, going to eat far less in the winter, but that's a unique scenario. We are not hibernating animals. But humans generally have greater appetite in the cold winter months. It's not just because of the holidays and the abundance of food that we're presenting ourselves with, But when we get a lot of sun, our appetite is reduced, or at least it's easier to control.
What I found over and over is that everybody over the age of 50, 60, 70, they think that all kinds of forgetting mean they have Alzheimer's. They'd say things to me like, well, I'm always forgetting names. And if I don't write down what I have to do later, I won't remember to do it. And I'm always walking into the kitchen and I don't know why I'm in there. So these people are panicked and afraid and stressed out and really ashamed of these moments of forgetting, which are actually totally normal. So what are the things that influence those amyloid plaque levels? Sleep. While you sleep, there are cells in your brain called glial cells. These are the janitors of your brain. It's the sewage and sanitation department. They get really busy clearing away all of the metabolic debris that accumulated in your brain while you were in the business of being awake. And one of the things it critically clears away is amyloid beta. So if you don't get enough sleep, the glial cells won't have enough time to do their jobs, and you'll wake up in the morning with some extra amyloid in your brain that wasn't cleared away. If this happens over decades, right, 15 to 20 years of amyloid plaque accumulation, you are increasing your risk of developing Alzheimer's. Diet. There have been many really good studies that have shown that being on a Mediterranean or MIND diet can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's from anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2. Exercise. It works to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's. A brisk walk for 30 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week is enough to decrease your amyloid plaque levels and reduce your risk of developing Alzheimer's by 1/3 to 1/2. Again, this is significant. If I offered you a pill that would reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 50%, you'd take it. So we want to get up and move around. Chronic stress is really bad for our memory, but learning new things. Let's say you haven't done any of those things I just mentioned. Let's say you're chronically sleep deprived, you're watching Netflix till 3 a.m., you've been raising kids for decades, you're a woman, you've gone through menopause. I don't need to list all that. Let's say your amyloid plaque levels have reached that tipping point, and it's triggered the cascade that causes Alzheimer's. If you've lived a life where you're cognitively active, you're regularly learning new things, you are building what we call a cognitive reserve. Every time you learn something new, you're building new synapses, you're building new neural connections. So what does this have to do with Alzheimer's? If I have some Alzheimer's disease pathology present in my brain, amyloid plaques are gunking up the connections between a certain number of neurons, blocking some synapses. But what if I've built a lot of redundant connections? I've got an abundance and a redundancy in connections. I can dance around those roadblocks. I can take detours and still get to the memory I'm trying to get to. So learning new things gives us a way to build an Alzheimer's resistant brain.
I do think that my method differs a little bit from positive affirmations or from fake it till you make it in the following way. So fake it till you make it is asking you to believe something about yourself without having evidence for it yet, right? You say, I'm a healthy person, even though you haven't gone to the gym yet or whatever. And we have a word for beliefs that don't have evidence. We call it delusion, right? Like at some point, your brain doesn't like this mismatch between what you're saying and what you're doing. And so the only nuance, the difference in my argument is that I think that we should let the behavior lead the way. So let the behavior drive the belief rather than the belief drive the behavior. And to be clear, it can work both ways, and it does throughout daily life. Like people adopt a new belief and then they take a new action because of it. But I think that if you're trying to get yourself to latch onto a new identity or tell yourself a new story, it's more powerful to let the behavior lead the way because the behavior provides immediate evidence that you are that kind of person. So if you say, I'm a healthy person, you might be able to, it's like a short-term strategy. You might be able to amp yourself up or motivate yourself in the moment. But if you do 5 push-ups, you immediately have proof, I'm a person who works out. And there's something about that evidence that I think makes it easier for you to root that new story in something. It gives you a reason to actually hold on to it. And so for that reason, I think it's more useful to start with the small habits, build up some evidence and proof of that new identity. And then the more that you do that, the bigger the pile of evidence becomes, the more reason you have to actually believe, hey, that is me.
Yeah.
Let's start thinking about repairing systems, based on all the things that we discussed, and not just putting a Band-Aid on it. You have diabetes, drug number 1, then you escalate to drug number 2, then you get cardiovascular disease, you have 2 more drugs there. And this is what happens. It's really criminal, I think, in the United States, in Europe, all over the world, as I call it unconspired conspiracy, right? So everybody is going along with this system, and you have a lot of bad food and a lot of drugs that people take, and the whole system is profiting from it. But people, the average 45-year-old now has got 2 chronic conditions in the United States. And so by the time you get to 55, 60, you probably have about 3 chronic conditions, taking lots of drugs, right? So we're saying, what is the system? Not to just block that, but to bring you back to a healthy status.